What if I told you that even if an accident wasn't your fault, you could still lose your license, get points on your record, and even face jail time simply because you left the scene? If you're wondering whether you can leave an accident scene and what can happen if you do, you're not alone. In this video, I'll explain exactly what happens in New Jersey and what you need to do next to protect yourself. First, we're going to talk about why New Jersey requires drivers to remain at the scene of an accident and why leaving is treated as such a serious offense, even when the accident seems minor. Then, I'll explain the penalties you could be facing, including the differences between accidents involving property damage and accidents involving injuries, and why those penalties are often much more severe than people expect. And finally, we'll discuss what you should do if you've already been charged, including some common mistakes people make after receiving a summons, and why the steps you take now can affect the outcome of your case. Now, most people think of leaving an accident scene as a situation involving more than just a dented bumper in a parking lot. But New Jersey's law isn't written just for minor accidents. It's written for everything from a scratch on a parked car to a collision that leaves another vehicle disabled or another driver seriously injured. The problem is that immediately after an accident, nobody really knows how serious it is. A vehicle that appears drivable may have hidden damage that causes it to fail a few miles down the road. A driver who says they're fine may later discover they've suffered a concussion, internal injuries, or some other condition that wasn't obvious in the moments after the crash. That's why the law doesn't allow drivers to make assumptions and simply leave. Instead, it requires them to stop, exchange information, and determine whether anyone needs assistance. The law is designed to protect everyone involved because what looks like a minor accident at first can turn out to be much more serious than anyone realized. And that's the first thing you need to understand. Leaving the scene of an accident isn't really about how serious it is or who caused it. It's about what every driver is legally required to do after an accident occurs. There's another point that surprises many people. Leaving the scene and causing the accident are two separate issues. You could ultimately be found not responsible for causing the accident and still face penalties for leaving the scene. So, what exactly does New Jersey require you to do after an accident? First, you're required to stop. You're also required to remain at the scene, exchange information and insurance information with the other parties involved, and determine whether anyone has been injured or needs assistance, or if the vehicle is disabled. Now, some people ask, what if I didn't know I hit someone? Well, that's an issue that sometimes comes up, especially in low speed accidents where a driver claims they never realized contact was made. Often this happens in parking lots where you're pulling into or backing out of a space. Every case depends on its own facts, and awareness can become an important issue in certain situations. But what happens if the police believe you failed to meet those obligations? If no one was injured, the penalties are still serious. You can face a fine of $200 to $400, a 6-month loss of your driver's license, 2 points on your driving record, and up to 30 days in jail. For many people, the biggest penalty isn't the fine, it's losing the ability to drive. A 6-month suspension can make it difficult to get to work, and you could lose your job. You can't take your children to school, attend medical appointments, or handle the everyday responsibilities most of us take for granted. And those penalties apply even when nobody was injured. If someone was injured, the consequences become much more severe. You can face a fine of $500 to $1,000, a 1 year loss of your driver's license, 8 points on your driving record, and up to 180 days in jail. So, now that you understand the penalties, let's talk about some of the mistakes people make after they receive this type of charge. Now, one mistake is simply ignoring the ticket. Another is treating it like an ordinary traffic citation. Some people even plead guilty without fully understanding the consequences. Others assume that because they weren't at fault for the accident, the leaving the scene charge will automatically disappear. Some people also talk too freely about the facts of the case without understanding how those statements could affect them later. The important thing to remember is that leaving the scene it can carry consequences far beyond the courtroom. A conviction can affect your driving privileges, increase your insurance costs, impact your employment, and make everyday life much more difficult. In some situations, it can even affect your freedom. That's why this isn't a charge that should be casually dismissed. The sooner you understand what's at stake and get appropriate guidance, the better position you'll be to protect yourself. If your ticket was issued in Burlington, Camden, Gloucester, Salem, or Cumberland County, New Jersey, feel free to click on the link in the description to schedule a call with me to discuss your case. That could be the most important next step you take. Now, if you've been charged with leaving the scene of an accident, don't assume that's the only ticket you need to worry about. In many New Jersey accident cases, drivers are also charged with failure to report an accident, and that's a completely separate violation with its own penalties and consequences. A lot of people think these two charges are the same thing, and they're not. You can be charged with one, the other, or both. So you need to understand what the second charge means and what impact it could have on your license, your driving record, and your case. That's exactly what I cover in my next video. What are the penalties for failure to report an accident? If you're trying to understand what failure to report an accident means and what can happen, that video is the next thing you should watch. Click on the video that's on your screen right now and I'll explain exactly what you need to know.